Revenge films.
I live with my wife, Milla, and we don't have kids yet. I go on business trips twice a month for 2 nights each. I hesitated to leave Milla at home during those times, but I received a business trip allowance and we would go out to a fancy restaurant when I got back. I would either drive myself or use the train for the business trip, and during the move or when I came back to a hotel, I used to research the next fancy restaurant I could take her to, which was a nice routine. One day I went on a business trip as usual, but this time I needed to be there only for 1 night due to the client's schedule. I would receive the same allowance even though it was shortened, so I was thinking about which restaurant we would go to this time. I decided to surprise Milla without telling her about the change in my schedule, but it turned out to be the beginning of the nightmare. I got back to my apartment a little before 8 p.m. I was thinking whether she had already eaten dinner, and I unlocked myself instead of ringing the doorbell. When I opened the door, I found a pair of men's shoes which were not mine, and different sizes as well. I wondered if Milla was having a guest, but at the same time, I heard a strange sound. I soon realized that sound was only one kind, and I thought Milla was watching that sort of video, and I was embarrassed to go into the living room. It would embarrass her too if I suddenly showed up there. I didn't know what to do for a moment, and I completely forgot about the unfamiliar shoes I just saw. But the voice was too real for the video. I slowly approached the living room and was shocked at the sight. Milla was having intercourse with another man on the couch. They were apparently having an affair, but the sight I saw was abnormal. Milla's wrists were tied with tape and she was wearing a sweater, but it was rolled up to her neck. She was wearing a skirt, but her underwear was hanging from her leg. I was at a loss for words. I've never seen Milla in that kind of style. I knew they were having an affair, but I couldn't help myself saying something. "What's going on?" The two saw me and froze. "What's going on here?" I said again, firmly.
No, he forced me. Help me.
"Get away from her!" I can explain." The man was totally panicked. "Did this man force you?" It was obviously an affair, but I dared to go along with her story.
Yes, he forced me to do this.
It didn't look good for the man, and he tried to run. I grabbed him reflexively and took out my phone to call the police. Then Milla was yelling something, but I ignored it and called. I told them Milla was raped by a man at home, and I got the man. Before the police arrived, Milla begged me not to make a big deal out of it, and the man kept saying it was consensual. I thought the man was telling the truth, but left the situation as it was. In the meantime, 5 or 6 police officers arrived. They even turned on their siren. When I invited the officers in, the two suddenly went quiet. The man was stark naked, and Milla was half naked. They might have considered the situation, and a female officer was among them. Milla crouched down, possibly from the shock. The man was telling his story to the officers. The evidence they got was that her wrists were still tied. The man was taken to the police station. I continued to talk to the officer, and Milla was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. Then forensics came and examined the scene, and I went to the police station with them for a more detailed statement. Even though it was late at night, a crowd of onlookers gathered at the entrance of the apartment. We were talking in what looked like a living room at the police station when another officer came in and called the officer I was talking to out into the hallway. Then he came back in and told me, "We examined your wife and found contraceptives in her. We talked further and found out it was mutual consent." Really? What will happen to my wife? She is shocked and we're keeping her here for a night. We don't intervene anymore as it is a civil matter. I apologize for your trouble. And they drove me home. The man's wife was called in to take him home and the affair was revealed. I called Milla's parents and asked them to take her in the following day. When they arrived, I couldn't bring myself to tell them the details, so the police officer did it instead. As they heard the details, they turned red with humiliation and bit Milla's head off.
What were you thinking? Shame on you!
She couldn't say anything with me beside her, just couldn't lift her head. Then her father told me to take her with them, so I agreed. The next day, I took a day off and went to Milla's work, where I found out that the man was her boss. They didn't seem to know how to deal with it because it was an infidelity, but they knew about their affair already. They later informed me that the man was transferred to a rural location. The man's wife acknowledged her husband's fault, but she saw Milla as an accomplice and demanded compensation from her. But she considered the fact that if Milla was charged, I might have a burden as well. So I told her that I was going to divorce her so she could charge her however she liked. Milla was seconded to an affiliated company, but it was essentially to clean the office and bathrooms of her previous workplace. She called me many times from her parents' house and asked me to get back together. Her parents told me their wish was that we could somehow avoid divorce. But I couldn't get that sight out of my head, and I could never live a married life with her. Lucky or not, we didn't have any kids, which we didn't have to worry about for divorce. But even if I were to compromise and reconcile with her, I could never have a married relationship with her, so what's the point of that? I wasn't willing to try to fix our marriage just to forgive her. I had no other choice but to divorce. Of course, I demanded compensation for her and the man. It took them some time, but Milla's parents understood my adamant attitude and eventually agreed to the divorce and told Milla to sign the paper. At her new work, word spread fast and she couldn't make any friends there, yet she was liable for damages and couldn't quit her job. Her parents also told her to accept the consequences and made her leave their house. Living in a shabby apartment, she made another attempt to get back with me crying, but after what I saw, it meant nothing to me. I just told her to sign the paper, and she finally did. She said that she was lonely because I was away often for my business trips and she made a mistake and that she still loved me. But she invited her man into our home when I was away for work. So I said, "How could you say that? I saw you having that much fun." And she couldn't say any more. The divorce of the man was being finalized. They'll have plenty of time to regret what they let into their lives.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.